do you self-identify with those views? Are those views attached to your identity? The ego hates when people attack your views because now it's like they're attacking you personally. And so your ego takes offense to it.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight Delbra.
What is up? Welcome to the Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. We are back. Today's discussion, we are going to talk about ego, friend or foe. We always hear about ego in Jiu Jitsu, and it's a topic I think everyone can relate to. I want to talk about how the ego can be beneficial, how it can be a negative impact on your life, how you can control it, how you can identify when maybe your ego is getting out of control, and have a good conversation about that. Before we do, though, please like, share, subscribe wherever you're listening to this show. Leave comments in the comment section if you can. Helps the algorithm a lot. If you like the show, please share it. And if you want to support or contact the show, I will leave links in the bottom for you. All right, let's get started. So before we get started talking about ego, I just wanted to read a quote. This is from someone named Hamza Youssef, is a Islamic scholar and an author. I say, quote, "The weak are dominated by their ego, the wise dominate their ego, and the intelligent are in a constant struggle against their ego." So what this means to me is, obviously it's not necessarily talking about like weak physical attributes, but weak-minded people, I assume. Weak-minded people are dominated by their ego. So ego requires control in order to get any kind of benefit out of it. If you can't control your ego, essentially your ego will control you. So people who are weak-minded allow their ego to control them. The wise or wise-minded people dominate their ego. So people who have wisdom, people who have experience, they understand that their ego is a part of them and they try and control their own ego or dominate their ego. And the intelligent are in a constant struggle against their ego. So smart people are in a constant struggle to control their ego. And this is, I think, very relatable because ego is something that we all struggle with. It's kind of like the two sides, one angel and one devil sitting on your shoulder. One of them is telling you, "Oh, you can do better. You should have more. You should have as much as this person. You know, you should have more things. You should be more successful. You should be smarter. You should have this. You should worry about your image." And the other person is the angel is on the other side of your shoulder thinking, "Oh, appreciate what you have. Think about the things you do well. It's not a race. It's, everyone learns at their own pace, blah, blah, blah." And it's always a constant struggle between the two. Let's discuss the reality of ego. So first of all, ego is Latin for I, as in I, myself. And basically the ego is a perception of yourself. So your own perception of yourself. Am I good enough? Do I look good enough? Am I happy with my body? Is my body as nice as my friend's body or any celebrity's body? How do other people see me? How do other people perceive me? So your ego is your own perception of yourself. Probably the most common cliche in regards to ego is leave your ego at the door. And I actually have a sign at my gym with gym rules. And one of the gym rules is leave your ego at the door. I use it as a teachable lesson for kids and beginners, but in actuality, there is falsehoods to this. Like leaving your ego at the door, if you're going to be a competitor in jiu-jitsu, you do to some degree have to have an ego. Look at a guy like Gordon Ryan or any of the top jiu-jitsu fighters, any top combat athlete, any top athlete in general has to have some degree of ego because they need that belief that they will be able to defeat other high-level opponents or be successful in at the highest level in a team sport. So as a coach, even though it's important to reel certain students back and say, "Hey, like it's okay if you lose in training, you should leave your ego at the door." Maybe they're trying too hard to win and they're resorting to using strength over technique, or maybe it's a kid who's crying and I'm trying to teach them, "Hey, winning isn't everything. We're in the practice room. This is about learning." it's important to use ego and as an example and say, leave your ego at the door, right? But at the same time, what if someone I'm training with is wanting to compete at a high level? They're going into a high level competition, worlds, or maybe they're in like a really high level tournament. I have to also help them maximize their ego and benefit from their ego. It would be silly for me to take a high level athlete that I'm coaching and say, hey, don't have any ego. That's kind of dumb, right? But there are times in training when you do want to have low ego or suppress your ego, or just understand that your ego's there, acknowledge it, and not let it control you, right? So everyone's different, and I tend to think that beginners and kids, it's really important to teach this cliche or this lesson, leave your ego at the door. Don't be afraid to lose. It's only training. But definitely high level competitors, we have to have an ego. Otherwise, like, I'm at the black belt level now, I try and compete with other black belts at the masters and the adult level. If I go in there without any ego, that's not necessarily beneficial for me as a competitor. I have to go in with the belief that I can beat this guy. What if you're an MMA fighter and you're training to essentially kill someone, and they're training to kill you, and you're in camp for 2-3 months, whatever, and now you're supposed to step into a cage with someone and think, oh, I have to leave my ego at the door. It's like, no, you have to have the mindset, like, I have to kill this person until the referee stops me, or else he's going to kill me, right? And so it depends who we're discussing, and it depends the level of maturity and self-control that this person has over themselves. Leave your ego at the door, right? Okay. Ego has like two faces. There's a positive side to ego, and there's a negative side to ego. The negative ego wants control over you, constantly wants to control you, makes you concerned about your physical image or your social, financial status, right? Oh, is my car as nice as it should be? Oh, well, other people in my profession have a nicer car, so I should have a nicer car. Oh, is my car too old? Do I need an upgrade, right? Like, if you're concerned about your image or your financial status, oh, I need to make more money, not just because I want to provide a better life for my family, but because I ought to make more money. I ought to have as much as the next person, right? That's not necessarily a good thing. I think it's a good thing to say, oh, I need more money because I want to provide for my family, and I want to give a better life to my family. But to say I'm not worth as much as a human being because I don't make enough money, that's a negative ego telling you these things, right? Your physical appearance, oh, I want to have 6-pack abs just like, Ryan Reynolds or whatever. I'm comparing myself to some bullshit Hollywood celebrity entity. Yeah, but you're not the same person. You might have a different body structure. And honestly, abs really have no actual value unless maybe you're a male model, right? So those are all kind of material things. They're superficial things. And if your ego is telling you, hey, you're not worth as much because you don't have these things, that is a negative thing. Same thing with ability or knowledge. I should be smarter. I should be better. I should be better at jiu-jitsu because someone who's trained less than me always beats me. So I'm comparing myself to them. I suck because they keep beating me. I should be able to beat them. Rather than that, think, why are they beating me? What are the things I can do that make me better, and understand that you are a different person from that person. Some people are more talented than others. Some people are more gifted. And your worth as a human being, or even as a jiu-jitsu fighter, is not based upon comparing your skills to the next person. Okay. And again, relationships as well. You might think, oh, my wife is not hot enough, or oh, so and so's wife has a nicer ass or bigger tits or whatever. My wife's not good enough, or my partner, doesn't even matter. These are all things. This is your ego telling you this, and trying to get control over you, and trying to tell you that, hey, you should have more. You should be better than this. Again, this leads to a lot of dark places. And getting control over your ego so it doesn't control you, very, very important. So let's discuss like examples of positive ego, how ego can be beneficial a little bit. Believing you can achieve something great. If you understand that you are skilled in something and you really know that in your heart, hey, I think I can compete at the highest level. You're not saying, hey, I'm better than everyone else and, I want to have that status that I am the best, blah, blah, blah. But no, you're like, hey, you know what? I train really hard. I put in my hard work. I believe I can win at the highest level, and I'm confident in my abilities. That's good. Going into a competition believing that and knowing that you've put in the work, that's really good. Believing that you can achieve something great. I think good, like when you can control your ego, it can give you motivation to take on something difficult. So that could be going into a competition, achieving a certain skill or a certain rank or a certain accolade, or even something like starting a business. So like I opened a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school when I was a purple belt. I got my brown belt the day that I opened my gym. Like if I had no ego, I probably would have never done that. Right? Because I would have never believed that I had the actual skill or knowledge or drive to be able to start a business like that. So I think anyone who is willing to achieve something great, whether it's in the business world, athletic world, intellectual world, whatever, they have to have some degree of ego fueling them, okay? But they don't let their ego control them. It's not because they want to look to be the best or they want their image to be a particular thing, but because they believe that they can actually achieve that thing and their ego is motivating them. So make sure that you have control of your ego, and your ego can dominate you negatively if you don't have that control. So let's talk about some examples of negative ego. Before we do, I'd like to read a quote from a gentleman named Eckhart Tolle. So Eckhart is a German spiritual teacher and also a self-help author. So he says, quote, "Negative states of mind, such as anger, resentment, fear, envy, and jealousy, are products of the ego." End quote. So basically, he's talking about obviously the negative side of ego and how ego can, it can really affect you negatively. It can affect your personality in a negative way. It can make you angry. It can make you resent other people because they might have more or be more successful. It might make you fear things, the fear of the unknown, the fear of someone else who is further ahead in life than you, or fear that you're not where you should be in life, instead of just sort of understanding that it's a process and that great things take time to achieve. Envious of other people, right? Envious because my neighbor has more than me. My neighbor, his woman is hotter than me. He's got more kids than me. He's got more money in the bank account than me, drives a nicer car than me. All of these things can lead to resentment and feeling that you're not worth enough as a person. You're not providing enough for your family. Jealousy, these are all products of the ego in terms of in a negative setting. So just understand that the ego in a negative setting, ego always wants to be right. Ego always wants to have control. So again, if you let this dominate you and your ego is always telling you, hey, you got to be right. You're going into an argument, you have to be right. You are now usually motivated by the idea of being right instead of the idea of finding the truth, or the idea of just trying to portray your opinion. It's now, I have to win this argument at all costs, right? Let's talk about like in a household situation with your partner or your spouse. Maybe your partner's trying to give you feedback about things that you could do better. And guys, I'm guilty of this, as I'm sure every person who's in a relationship is. There's times when your partner gives you feedback. Hey, I didn't like when you did this. I didn't like when you talked to the kids like that. I think we should do something this way. And if your ego controls you, you are going to just shut out their opinion. It's almost like that you didn't even hear them talk. And now you are trying to be right, or you're trying to assert your point of view without really understanding the other person's feedback. And if you're in a relationship, you're probably relating to this right now. There's times when my wife has told me, hey, Matt, like there's things that you do that kind of piss me off. And there has been times when I've thought, well, fuck you, my way's the best, and this is why, and you need to learn why my way is the best, and you need to agree that my way is the best, instead of just thinking, maybe I should see it from my wife's point of view. Oh yeah, I can understand why that way is not the best for her or the best for the kids. And there's times when I've allowed my ego to take control, and then there's times when I've reeled my ego back. But again, we'll talk more about arguing with your partner a little bit later on in the show, but just understand that when your partner's coming to you with feedback and you disagree, you have that immediate reaction. I need to disagree with you and you're wrong and I'm right. Ask yourself, is that your ego being a little bit too loud and having a little bit too much control over you? Fighting unnecessary battles, fighting for the sake of winning the fight rather than finding the truth, like we talked about, refusing to change your mind. So fighting unnecessary battles. I'll give you an example, and I'm not proud of this. There was a time when I was a chef, there was a time when I beefed with this guy in the kitchen. He kind of treated me like shit. I was just coming into the kitchen. I was working at a pub. I was in the dish pit, obviously like starting my culinary journey. Usually people start in the dish pit. I remember this guy talking shit to me and coming up to me and saying, I'll kill you and all this shit. And like, I actually stood up to this guy on the job and I sort of said, okay, let's go. He walked up to me face to face and then he just walked off and never came back to the job. And I also had a couple of friends in the kitchen that had put down their knives at the time and they were ready to just back me up because they thought a brawl was happening, okay? This guy had threatened my life. He said he was going to kill me, disparage me for being in the dish pit, et cetera, et cetera. He kind of made me feel like shit. I saw this guy a couple years ago. It was actually at a doctor's office. I'm not proud of this. I just saw him and he was looking at me. I was looking at him. I don't think he recognized me, right? And at this point, I'm a Red Seal chef. I had a culinary career that I've moved on from. I'm a black belt, et cetera. And I remember going to him and saying, hey, so-and-so, remember me? I was in the dish pit. Do you remember? Do you still want to, we can always go. I'm trained at this point. And my ego had controlled me in that moment. It was kind of a moment that I look back at now and I'm like, did I really fucking do that? Did I challenge this guy who's basically a stranger? I challenged him to a fight in a doctor's office, which is incredibly foolish. Not only could it lead to legal ramifications, but if my doctor finds out that I'm picking fights in the doctor's office, it's hard enough in Canada to get a doctor, and I might not have a doctor anymore. And it was really dumb. It was my ego taking control of the moment because I was still caught up in a past situation where I thought that this person was unfair to me and I wanted revenge. So the ego wants revenge and the ego wants control. The ego was telling me in that moment, hey, remember when that guy talked shit to you in the dish pit and he was calling you a little bitch and said he was going to kill you and all this shit, and you can take this guy. Now you're a black belt. You could fuck this guy up. You should go address this. And I did, and I regret it. I shouldn't have done that. That was a moment that I'll remember forever where I let my ego control me, where I should have control over my ego. Okay, another example, and this doesn't really happen to me often. I won't say it's never happened, but like road rage situations. So, someone honks at you, someone cuts you off, you try and speed up to them, you're looking at each other, hey, fuck you, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's so dumb. Are you going to do that to a random stranger in public? What if you both get out of your car and this guy's massive? Or what if this guy just pulls a weapon on you and now you're actually in a situation that you have contributed to the escalation of this situation? There's no de-escalation in sight, and now we're getting into a physical altercation. It can happen that quickly. We see videos of this happen on social media all the time. So just be careful next time you pick a fight with someone on the road. Ask yourself, if we weren't in two separate vehicles, if we were just standing next to each other, would we be fighting with each other? Is it worth someone honking their horn at you? Is it worth this escalating into a physical altercation where someone could lose their life? Someone could go to prison for many, many years if an accident happens, like you don't know this person. You don't know if they're trained. You don't know if they're armed. You don't know what they're capable of doing. Maybe they're having an extremely shitty day, and all it takes is just one spark and they're going to be ready to take this all the way into a physical altercation. Super deadly and dangerous ramifications could be around this. So, when I'm on the road, I try my best to keep my ego in check and to kind of just let people have the right of way. People get mad at me, I just kind of laugh at it and say, hey, you know what? Like, this isn't worth it. I know how dangerous this can get. This could get downright deadly, and it's not really worth allowing my ego to one up this person, okay? Even if you're having a shitty day, it's important to think, hey, this is your ego telling you to go fight that person or that you should cut them off because they cut you off or whatever. And not only you're putting you and your whoever's in your car and the other person at risk, you're putting other vehicles on the road at risk. And like I said, all it takes is one mistake, and you could be in jail forever. You could be badly injured, injure someone else. You could be dead. It depends where the situation goes. So again, not letting ego take control of you on the road, extremely important. Not starting fights when you're out at the bar. Again, especially alcohol playing a huge factor. I find alcohol, one of the biggest things alcohol does for me, aside from gives me flare-ups and fucking up my body, is it makes me aggressive. And I think it makes everyone aggressive. Alcohol makes people aggressive, it makes them stupid, and it makes them horny. And there's always tons of mistakes that surround those situations. So when you're under the influence, you're not really yourself, okay? And it's important to understand that if you, okay, tonight we're gonna tie one on, we're gonna go out drinking with the boys. Just know before you get into that hey, I gotta keep myself in check. I don't want to end up in jail. What if I get into a fight, I hit someone, they fall over, they get knocked out. I'm a big man, but they smash their head on the concrete. Now they have brain damage, or now they're dead. Now I'm going to prison for, it could be a long, long time. And now my kids don't have a dad. You see how quickly things can get escalated from these types of situations. So it's really important that you control your ego when your ego's like, hey, fuck this guy. I can beat this guy up. He said shit about my woman. He said shit about my buddy. Go fight him, right? Man, it's risky out there. Be very, very careful, especially when your ego's telling you to be aggressive and get into physical altercations. And another thing is, like, let's say you're refusing advice from your coach or your mentor or teammates around you. Maybe they come into you and saying, hey, Matt, I just want you to know, like, your rash guard, it kind of stinks. Like, maybe it's time to get a new rash guard. Fuck you, this rash guard's clean, blah, blah, blah. It's, or maybe your coaches will try and correct a technique. Maybe you're not doing something right. And instead of listening to what other people have to say, you're saying to yourself, oh, I already know that. Oh no, I do it like this. This is my way. I like to do it this way. And I've had people tell me that in my years as a coach. And when that happens, people don't want to respond well to that. They just say, okay, okay, do it your way. And really all that's happened is you've denied yourself the ability to learn something. And when you deny yourself the ability to learn something, you put people off that are trying to help you. They don't want to help you anymore. And you don't reach the next level because your ego is shutting out information because you do not want to admit that you maybe could learn more, or maybe you were wrong, right? Super important that you understand this, especially when your goal is about growing and learning whatever type of skill or whatever topic this is. You want to become better if you have a Kaizen mindset. And your ego could be shutting you out and keeping you down at a lower level because you're afraid to admit that maybe you were wrong, or you don't want to admit that you don't know everything. Just drinking a giant Starbucks coffee. I went into the drive-thru and they're like, oh, we're out of venti cups, so here's a Trenti cup. I didn't even know this was a thing. This thing is massive. So I'm just flying right now on coffee. All right, let's talk about, is your ego tricking you? The ego is very tricky. The ego wants to control you. It wants to be deceptive. It wants to, it'll try and trick you and make you think things that aren't necessarily true. And when you get these thoughts inside your head, it's important to understand that they are just thoughts and that it's not necessarily the truth, but it might just be how you perceive yourself, how you perceive the world, how you perceive other people's. And yeah, sure, Clay, just get right in the shot, buddy. It's all good. So where were we? Yeah, it's important to understand that these thoughts aren't necessarily the truth. It could just be that devil on your shoulder telling you, oh, you're not good enough. You need to be better. You're not as good as the next person. Let's talk about this next quote that I have for you guys from a person named Numan Ali Khan. He's an Islamic speaker. I say, quote, if someone corrects you and you feel offended, then you have an ego problem, end quote. So again, the idea of being offended, everyone's so quick to be offended today. The issue with today is now we can instantly know everyone's political beliefs or everyone's ideologies. Because of social media, we have mass communication and information. This never really existed before. We didn't have like a public place where I could know my next door neighbor's political affiliations or know what their political or religious ideologies are. And when you know what those things are, your mind starts to play tricks on you. It starts to tell you, oh, like that person believes that. How can you fucking respect that person anymore? I can't respect someone who thinks that. And this is very easy to do, especially like during the COVID times, around election times. If people go online and they talk about religion or politics or whatever, you start to look at them differently and be like, oh, like how can you, oh, this person supports that. This person's a socialist. This person's a capitalist. How can I support that, right? When instead it's just your ego telling you to think lesser of someone because they don't believe what you believe. And again, I've been guilty of this, and now I try to not allow these opinions to control me because it's very easy to lose friends and to lose relationships when you think like this. And that's why there's that quote, don't ever talk to anyone about religion or politics. And there's truth to that, because really, if we start knowing things like that, we start to judge them. And at the end of the day, I could have a really good friend and not know what their affiliations are. And then all of a sudden we start talking about politics. And before you know it, we're looking at each other like, I don't even know you anymore. I don't even want to hang out with you anymore because we believe different things. And it's important to just allow each other to believe different things and understand that you're not necessarily going to change each other's minds. Ego can make you think you know more than you already do. So like I said earlier, if your ego is telling you that you already know this and I don't need to learn this, you're denying yourself the ability to learn, and then you're not going to easily get to the next level. This cat. And we just talked about how, ego can affect relationships in your life with your spouse or your neighbor, your best friend, whatever. What about in a business situation? Like, let's say I have employees that are coming to me and they're telling me, hey, boss, our systems could be a little bit more improved. I think we can streamline something by doing this. And me as the boss saying, who the fuck are you to give me advice? I'm the boss. Things are done the way I want them to be done. Stay in your lane. What do you think that person's going to say? They're going to say, okay, you don't care about my feedback. You don't care about actually improving this company. You're not open-minded. And I just don't want to come to you anymore with my opinions, right? So that doesn't really help you as a business person. Instead, it's important, I think, to understand that no matter who you're hearing feedback and advice from, whether it's someone above you, below you, you can always learn something from someone. I have blue belts coming to me in my class and they're like, hey, look at what I saw on social media. Check out this cool new, this detail that Jason Rao showed or Jonathan Thomas showed or whoever. And I'm like, that's pretty fucking cool, actually. And even if I know it already, I'll be like, yeah, that's cool. If I don't know it or if I disagree with it, I'll be like, yeah, I mean, that is cool. I usually do things like that, but I appreciate that you came and told me because I think that that's something that maybe could work, and I didn't know that, so thank you. Rather than having the opinion of, hey, stay in your lane. I'm a black belt. You're a blue belt. Don't be telling me shit. I teach you shit, right? Like that's just, first of all, you're a douchebag. Second of all, you're not going to be really improving from that. Or what if you're in business and your boss comes up and tells you, hey, Matt, you've been doing this mistake, etc. You shouldn't be doing this mistake. Can you make this change? And I say, what the fuck does this boss know? I'm the one who's doing all the work. They sit in the office all day. So who are you to educate me on how to make my job smoother? Instead of doing that, say, okay, boss, you're right. I'll do that, right? And even if you disagree, it will help reaffirm your boss as the manager, and it will improve. It will keep the relationship improved. Okay. And I think there's ways to disagree with your boss without letting your ego get in the way. For example, say your piece without being emotionally charged to your opinion. Say your piece and just say, hey, just in my opinion, I think things will work smoothly this way. I just want to show you, in my opinion, what I think could make our systems run even better. But you're the boss and I respect your opinion. That is a totally fair and non-egotistical way to convey your opinion to someone who is outranking you, okay? Ask yourself, do other people's opinions offend you and why? Everyone's getting offended nowadays. They see opinion they don't like on social media, boom, they get offended. Whether it's about COVID or politics or whatever, I disagree with you. Guys, try not to get emotionally charged with your opinions and I'm guilty of this too, just like everyone else, humans, we are emotional beings. Sometimes I get emotionally attached to my opinions. And I think it's important when you hear a differing opinion, it's important to not get offended. Now, that being said, what if someone is trying to advocate to me about how that being attracted to children is okay, like something totally disgusting? I think it's morally wrong. And in that case, yes, that does offend me because I believe in my morals that is something completely wrong. That being said, I think it's important to not attack or not necessarily attack or especially not physically attack that person. But what I would do is I would just start mocking them. And I would be like, hey, everyone, look at this person's opinion. They think that it's okay to be attracted to minors, blah, blah, blah. This is totally, in my opinion, disgusting. But I am not offended when someone tells me, hey, Matt, I need to wear a mask because I'm afraid of COVID. It's like, you know what? And I've made fun of mask wearers before. I say, you know what? Yes, I disagree with you. And I think that COVID is not as deadly as we thought it was. But I also respect the fact that you're possibly afraid of COVID, or maybe you have loved ones that are older or compromised and you want to wear a mask for personal reasons. Fine. I get it. Okay. But, that being said, I think it's ridiculous that people are still wearing masks. So either way, whatever disagreement you may have, I think it's important that you don't get overly emotionally tied to those opinions, because when you get emotionally tied to your opinions, you are not going to be actually able to have a argument or a debate with someone that can be productive. It's only going to turn into I'm right, you're wrong, and it's never going to turn into a situation where you want to hear the other opinion. Okay. Do you feel the need to be right all the time? This is something, especially after the COVID thing, where I look at people in my life and I'm like, oh, I think you just want to be right all the time. And they probably think the same thing about me. I was vaccine hesitant. I didn't want to get the vaccine right away. I wanted to wait. And we've seen that there are, as much as they want to deny it, there are people that are having myocarditis, blood clots, things like that. Maybe this is the point where they actually cancel me because I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying these things like this. But I know people who got myocarditis after the vaccine. I know people that got blood clots after the vaccine. I know people that got cancer immediately after the vaccine. Was it because of the vaccine? I'll never be able to prove that at all. But a lot of people are having negative side effects, and I don't know that you can deny that. And so when someone told me, hey, you have to get the vaccine or you can't go to a restaurant. You have to get the vaccine or else you're a conspiracy theorist. You have to get the vaccine or else you're putting everyone at risk. You have to get the vaccine because if you don't, this pandemic is going to continue and that's your fault. So it wasn't really an emotional, even though I did get emotionally charged by that, and anyone who follows me on my social media during COVID sees that. It was more because in my heart, in my morals and values, I believed it was wrong for me to check other people's medical history. I believe it was wrong that the government could tell me I can't do certain things unless I get this vaccination, and I don't have control over my own body. So I did get emotionally charged, and hey, I was wrong for that. Okay, I shouldn't have been emotionally charged, and I certainly shouldn't have gotten angry because I couldn't change other people's minds. For me, that was one of the biggest wrongs that I made during COVID, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I tried to change people's minds, and I had no right to do that. It wasn't my place to change people's minds. I shouldn't have done that, and I should have accepted, hey, there are people with different opinions, and I was wrong for getting emotionally charged and trying to force them to change their mind. Now, they'll never admit that they were wrong for not being my friend anymore because I didn't want to get the vaccine, or not letting me visit their business because I didn't want to get the vaccine, or, calling me crazy conspiracy theorist because I wanted to wait on getting the vaccine. They'll never admit that, and that's their own ego. But what I can control is my own ego, and I can reflect on it and say, hey, that was fucked up of me to judge someone and try and force them to change their mind. Who was I to do that? Okay. Remember, ego can prevent you from learning something new and learning from others. We already talked about that. You can always learn something from anyone else. Doesn't matter if they're above you in rank or below you in rank. Don't get into a habit where you shut away people's opinions and people's advice. That's where there's always going to be tons of growth and learning. Ego can blind you from your own ignorance. Sometimes because of your ego, you don't know how much you don't know. And jiu-jitsu is a fine example of that, especially when you reach like the black belt level and you realize, holy shit, like I'm actually just a white belt in a pool of black belts now. And there's so much I don't know yet. There's so much that I need to know. And when you first start jiu-jitsu, you're like a white belt, a blue belt. You know, you start having some success. You think you're the shit. You're like, holy shit, things are working, because you can measure that immediate improvement. But as you go further and further on in the sport, you start to realize, hey, like this is such a vast topic. It really does take a lifetime of study, and you can never know it all. And it's important to know that you can never know it all. And cooking is very, very similar in that way. I don't like the word master in terms of like mastering a skill like jiu-jitsu or cooking, because to me, you can never really master someone. There's always someone who is more learned, someone who's always got more experience, someone who's always at a higher level. And if you let your ego blind you and sort of make you an ignorant person, you're not going to reach that next level. And another thing is you're going to be fucking unpleasant to be around. Okay. So it's really important to sort of reel that back. And we're about to talk about controlling your ego as well. Just remember that it's very off-putting to your mentors and people around you if they're trying to give you advice and you just tell them to go screw off. I can remember there was a student a couple of years ago, and this guy's actually still with me. And I remember one of my coaches was helping him with a Kimura, and he basically said, "Yeah, I already know how to do this," right? And like sort of barked back, and his ego in that moment said to him, "Hey, I already know how to do this." And unfortunately, he couldn't control his reaction, and it was very off-putting. And then the other coach was like, "Do you even want to be here? Like, I'm trying to help you, and instead you're firing back at me. Even if you realized, hey, I actually knew how to do it, just say thank you." And what this means is this person, that coach, after that was hesitant to help that person again. And so it wasn't a productive situation, okay? It's important when someone, especially someone who outranks you or someone who has more knowledge than you, an employer, a higher rank in jiu-jitsu, whatever, your boss, they give you advice. Even if you disagree with them, react in a way that will reaffirm them and also keep ties of communication open. Because you start shutting people out, you're gonna gain a bad reputation, and you're not gonna benefit from other people's advice and other people's feedback. Just remember, people do not want to help or work with people who have these negative egos. Let's talk about maybe the most important part of this podcast, controlling your ego. So if you don't control your ego controls you. One thing I really like is to look at the beauty in life, okay? The beauty in your life, the sun shining on your face, a kid's smile, holding your son or your daughter, hearing your kid laugh, having love for your partner or your kids, whatever. Even if you win a tournament or you buy that new car that you've worked really, really hard for, like appreciate what you have rather than always wanting something more. If you always want something more, again, it's a fine line between, sorry, that's just my alarm. If you, where was I? If you always want more, it's a fine line between being motivated and being controlled, right? It's good to be motivated to get that car that you're working towards or get that new apartment you're working towards or whatever. That's healthy. It's bad to be controlled and to feel that you are not good enough if you don't have those things. So it's a fine line. Appreciate what you have rather than what you always want and always wanting more. Be grateful for what you have, what you've accomplished. Look at your life and say, hey, you know what? Like, I paid off my car. Could I have a nicer car? Yeah, but that's impressive. I paid off my car. Oh, I got my purple belt. How many people get their purple belts? Very few people that do jiu-jitsu actually follow it through and get to like purple belt level. And if you get to purple belt level, there's a good chance you're going to stick with jiu-jitsu for a long time. A lot of people get their blue belt and they just leave, right? But if you get your purple belt, a lot of people will just stick with it and keep grinding. So that's a huge accomplishment, or you win a tournament. I got a gold medal finally. That's great. Be grateful for that. Reflect on that and then move on and keep working towards Kaizen mindset, keep working towards the next accomplishment. But do it in a way where you're not judging yourself based on failing or succeeding. It's a process, and appreciate what you have done well and let your ego motivate you rather than control you. I recommend, we said this in terms of Kaizen mindset and everything. Focus on the small habits that can yield long-term results rather than like making your goal the result. So if I make my goal, okay, I have to win Masters Worlds in a month. I have to win it. Okay, it's so important to me. I have to win Masters Worlds. Instead of that, think, okay, today I need to train twice. I need to do some weights. I need to do my jiu-jitsu. Tomorrow I'm going to do my cardio and I'm going to do jiu-jitsu. The next day I'm going to do jiu-jitsu and I'm going to study for an hour. Like, what are the habits that you are setting for yourself that can lead to these goals rather than just focusing on the result? At the end of the day, I kind of think that the journey itself is the goal. Like, I learn the most from the overall journey, and I try not to make the result, winning a tournament or whatever, I try not to make that a measure of my worth. Instead, I look and I say, okay, how much have I grown in the last month? When I've set these small goals, have I improved? What have I done better? What can I need to do? What do I need to do better, right? So small habits instead of big results. Building small habits actually, in my opinion, leads to big results over time. Stop assessing your worth comparing yourself to others. This one's really important. When you control your ego, I think it's important to let the success of others motivate you and inspire you. And that's all great. So-and-so won this tournament, or this person in the gym is really good. They always win their roles, blah, blah, blah. Instead of being jealous and envious of that person and letting that cloud your mind, think to yourself, how can I be more like them? Like, what are they doing that is bringing them success? And how can I copy that? How can I take what they're doing and sort of adopt it into my own practice? And maybe I can see the same success. Or look at their mistakes and ask yourself, how are they avoiding certain mistakes? And what mistakes are they making? How can I avoid those mistakes, right? How can I learn from someone else's mistakes? That's also really, really important. So letting someone motivate and inspire you is different from always competing with someone and having negative thoughts if you cannot beat them. In an argument situation, we already talked about arguing with partners and friends and all that, but you got to ask yourself, if you're having an argument with someone or a debate, can you actually change their mind? Like, is it possible when you're arguing, ask yourself, like, is this conversation kind of going in a negative route where we're just both yelling at each other trying to be correct? Or is this a situation where we actually legitimately could get through to the other person and change their mind? If everyone's just trying to be right, then it's probably not a fruitful conversation, and the conversation might end in a fight. It might end in where you're feeling negative about the other person, and where there's just no communications actually getting through. It just becomes a yelling match. Ask yourself, when you have said conversations or arguments, do you lie to be right? Do you bend the truth, or do you straw man someone just to win an argument? So a straw man, if you don't know, that's a fallacy where basically you take their argument and you change it to try and weaken their stance, and then you attack that stance. So it's kind of like you make the argument for them and you're disingenuous as to how you represent their argument. And then instead of attacking what they said, you attack your own disingenuous view of their argument, okay? If you do these things all for the sake of winning an argument, that's extremely disingenuous, and it's going to lead to a lot of people not liking you and a lot of people basically changing their opinion to a negative opinion of your moral character. So it's important that you don't lie, bend the truth, or straw man people just to win an argument. This is a really important one, especially for the couples out there. And again, I'm human, I've done this. My wife's done this. I'm pretty sure everyone's done this, but it's important that we understand that we've done this so we can not do it again. Do you take past arguments where maybe you're like, I wish I had said that in that moment. I should have said that. And then you reopen that past argument because you thought of better viewpoints at a different time, and do it just for the sake of being correct. Like, my wife fucking hates when I do this. I'll bring up something from the past that we've already argued about. We've already fought about it. And I bring up a new point that I wish I'd thought of in the moment, and I reopen that scab. And now we're just fighting again. It's not a good thing to do. Try to avoid bringing up past arguments with people. People just want to move on a lot of the time when you're done an argument. And it's not a fruitful thing to do. You're just doing that. Your ego's telling you, hey, you need to one up someone. You need to have the last word. You need to get this point across. You need them to understand your opinion. Do you think that they're actually able to change their mind, right? Is this coming from a place of emotion, or you just trying to one up someone? Or is it a healthy situation where you're actually trying to educate someone and hopefully change their mind, right? You got to ask yourself, am I letting my ego control these conversations? One thing you can do as sort of like an antidote is when you're arguing with someone, see if you can just let it go. See if you can concede the argument and just say, you know what? You're right. Or can you change your mind? Can you go into an argument and actually you hear some points that make sense and you're like, you know what? I can see it from your point of view. I understand. I guarantee if you are in an argument and you start taking that stance, it will be so much more productive, and the other person will start to let their guard down. They will start to say, hey, you know what? They're actually giving me a little bit of leeway. Okay, you can see it from my point of view. Okay, we can have a conversation here because it's no longer us just fighting each other, but now it's actually us trying to educate each other and trying to really explain our point of view, and we're not arguing for the sake of being right. So letting things go in an argument often will ease tension in an argument, and it becomes less about being right and more about communication, which is really what an argument is supposed to do. Okay? So trying to remove emotional and personal attachment from arguments, very, very important, especially if you want to be in a relationship for a long time. Every time you concede an argument or let something go, the negative ego dies a little. It loses control over you a little bit, and that's a good thing. Another thing, ego, controlling your ego. Imagine someone said this to you after you win a roll with them. Oh, that was a crank, right? You choke someone out, they tap, and they tell you that was a crank. That's their ego telling you, oh, that's not a legit submission. That wasn't a real strangle. It's like, you tapped. You tapped, so it is legit. I'm sorry. If you tap out, it's legit, right? Or you smother someone. Oh, that's not a real technique. It's like, yeah, but you still tapped. You still couldn't breathe. You had to tap. How can you tell me it wasn't real? Or I worked a long day today. It's like, yeah, motherfucker, we all work. We all work and we all had long days. That is an excuse that your ego is telling you to justify poor performance or performance that is lacking. Or what about next time I'll train more seriously, or I didn't try this time. So again, these are things that you hear douchebags say in the gym or in competition. And I love when people say stuff like that. I'll try harder next time. I didn't really train hard for this, It's like, okay, so you're just telling me that you're unprofessional? You're just telling me that you're not dedicated? How is it my fault that I took this seriously and trained hard and you didn't train hard for this? And in their mind, they're justifying poor performance. Oh yeah, well, you could train harder and then you'd win or whatever. How does that help anyone? It just makes you look like a weak-minded person, like in the quote we discussed earlier. Ask yourself, do you self-identify with your views or your success? So there's certain individuals in my life who really self-identify with the COVID thing. The masks, the vaccines, they are going out on their shield even now in 2023 and talking about how COVID's still dangerous and all that, we need to mask up, we need to get our boosters, all that. And they really make that their identity. Okay. Do you self-identify with those views? Are those views attached to your identity? The ego hates when people attack your views, because now it's like they're attacking you personally. And so your ego takes offense to it. Always be aware of this. I have views too that I don't like people to attack, COVID things, jiu-jitsu things, people attack jiu-jitsu. Sometimes maybe I get offended because I feel like they're attacking me personally, but then I got to reel it back and think, hey, this voice that I'm hearing is just my ego. It's just thoughts, and I can choose to not get upset about it. I can choose to not take offense by it and grow from this. Okay, and I think it's important to also reflect in your past, when are times that you have taken offense to things, and reflect on that and think, why did I take offense to that? And how could I have approached that differently for next time when that does happen, when someone says something I don't like? let's talk about kids for a little bit, just real quick, because kids in jiu-jitsu, obviously in class, egos sometimes get the better of them. So I always encourage kids to embrace the process, and that includes the losing process as well, and to feel comfortable with losing and also with discomfort, because in life and in jiu-jitsu, you're going to be uncomfortable at times and you're going to fucking lose. There's no way around that. Everyone loses. Everyone gets smashed now and then. Okay, I'd like to use an example. There's two kids in my class, and whenever they get paired up, one of them is always comparing himself to the other one. I've even heard him say, "I'm going to beat so and so in competition one day." The problem is that student is underranked compared to the other student, so he's always losing. He's closing the gap and he's getting better, and he's really making things competitive. But at the same time, he judges his worth by, can I beat the other student? This is unhealthy, because what'll happen is they'll have an amazing roll, and he'll work so hard and he's making it damn competitive, but then eventually he loses. He gets his guard passed or gets submitted or whatever, and then immediately he starts crying. Okay? So when that happens, that is the ego telling him, hey, you should be able to beat this guy. Why can't you beat this guy? You should be able to be better than you are, be more effective than you are. You're working so hard. Why can't you beat this guy? You are worth less because you can't beat this guy. And so he reacts with crying, or even sometimes I've even seen it get rough, and even strikes can be thrown. So what I had to do was tell this student, hey, you need to sit out of comp class for a while, because comp class is a special class and it involves a certain level of maturity. You're a very good competitor, you're very good on the mats, and your jiu-jitsu is getting damn good. But until you show me that you can be mature and you cannot be emotionally invested in winning or losing, I can't let you be in the comp class, because you're disrupting the chemistry of the room, especially when you start to cry and pitch a fit because a roll didn't go your way. So I need to see this change before you return to kids' comp class. Okay? I think the antidote for a child who has a big ego, tell the child to focus on the process and to stop comparing themselves to others. Prioritize improvement over rank or an achievement, whether it's a tournament or winning a role against said training partner. And also share with them, relate to a time when my own ego got in the way and how I was wrong, and to be transparent and to use my own ego getting in my way as a negative, as a teachable moment, and say, hey, there was times when I didn't like when someone beat me in a roll and I got real pissed off about it, and that was wrong of me. And then explain to them what an ego is, so that they can acknowledge that, hey, I do have an ego and I need to keep that ego in check. I think that's incredibly valuable. All right, let's talk about something kind of opposite from ego almost, humility and self-esteem. Humility means taking a modest or a lower view of one's importance. So, kind of taking a step back and saying, I know I'm good at something, but like, I could be better. I need to be way better, actually. Like there's a lot I can learn. I can learn a lot from people. Self-esteem is having self-respect or confidence in one's own worth or abilities. So you're acknowledging, hey, I am actually pretty good at something, but I'm humble. I have humility, knowing that I could be way better, that I'm not always right, that I don't always win, and that I don't always have the best ideas or opinions, and that, I'm willing to change my mind, or I'm willing to adopt a new training style to yield better results. My way is not the best way. I think humility and self-esteem is kind of the antidote to ego. Like I talked about with the kids, admitting there are times when you were wrong, admitting times when your ego got in the way, admitting you don't know everything, and welcoming opposing views, trying to steel man the person that you're arguing with. So a straw man, you're attacking their opinion that is not even their opinion. It's a weakened version of their opinion. A steel man is where you take someone's argument and you try and make it as strong as possible, and then you attack that. So you're trying to actually give them the strongest argument possible, really trying to understand their argument and then try and attack that idea. Understand that humility can be perceived as a weakness. Okay. I think weak-minded people look at humility as a weakness. Oh, I'm being transparent. I don't know everything. some people will think, hey, that's a weakness, but it's actually a strength, because when you have that idea that you don't know everything or that you need help, please help me. Please, I want to hear your opinion. Please, I want my mind changed. I want to be wrong. Tell me. That's actually a strength, because it will lead to growth in the long run. Okay. And it's incredibly strong, in my opinion, to have that mindset of, I don't know everything and I could be better. Humility is I think it's a pretty likable trait to level with someone and say those things. And hey, guys, how can we make this better? I need your help. I know I'm the boss, but I need your help. People will like that. It will empower the people around you to give you more feedback, and they will think, hey, this guy's actually genuine. He's saying he's not the best. He's saying maybe he's got self-esteem and he knows that he's talented, but he's also saying, please, let's work together. Help me become better. I know that I'm not the best. Even if I'm good, I need to be better, and I want you guys to help me. I want to hear your opinions. But not to be confused with fake humility. So let's say I roll with a white belt and I absolutely murder him. And he's like, man, you're really good. And I'm like, no, actually, I suck so bad. I suck. They're going to be like, well, then how bad am I? You know what I mean? And in the end of the day, you don't want to be fake humility. That's where self-esteem comes in. And we want to acknowledge, yeah, I am good. Dude, I train 6 to 7 days a week, 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours a day for 15 years. I should be good. I've put in the hours. I'm a black belt. I make jiu-jitsu my life. So I should be good. However, compared to some black belts, I suck. Okay. So we don't want to have the humility of oh, I know I'm absolutely awful, when you're not. Understand that there's a difference between humility and fake humility. It is possible to have high self-esteem and humility at the same time. And that's important. I think it's important to have both of those things. But when you're having a humility, do not over diminish your own skills or abilities and start patronizing people. Like I said, fake humility. Oh, I suck. It's yeah, but you're a black belt. You don't suck, right? Or you're a world champion. You're oh yeah, well, I'm not very good. It's dude, you are good. We all can see that. You're actually patronizing someone by telling them that. Be transparent. Show people your weaknesses. This will build trust and respect, and actually show the people around you that you are human. You make mistakes. This involves in jiu-jitsu, family life, business life, working with kids. Very, very important. And having humility means that you know that you can always learn more or improve and reach new levels. And I think humility, being humble, is a contagious trait, because in a room where everyone's trying to kill each other and they think that they're trying to be the best, you see the instructor take on the approach of hey, I don't care if I don't win every roll. I want to put myself into late stage defenses, and if you tap me out, fine, not a big deal. When people start to see that, it will move around the room, and people will now start to roll as if they don't need to win, but more that they're just trying to get to the next level and they're just trying to learn. Okay, especially in a situation in a gym, if the instructor has this persona that they never tap, something you see sometimes, they never tap. They refuse to tap. Even in a deep submission, they make their partners pop their arm or whatever. That is ego, okay? Not tapping out when you should, that is ego. What does that tell the people that are training with you? It tells them, oh, I shouldn't be tapping. Tapping is weakness. And if my professor is never tapping, even when their arm is breaking, what does that tell them? It sets an example. But if you're not afraid to tap out in front of people, and you're not afraid to let a blue or a purple belt put you in an arm bar, and you're trying to defend the arm bar, and then you get tapped out, and everyone sees that, and you're like, yeah, I got tapped. What does that do? It's a positive change for the whole room, because the whole room now sees that you're human. They don't put you on a pedestal. You shouldn't be on a pedestal, even if you're a black belt gym owner. And it shows everyone it's okay to lose, and it's part of the learning process. All right, let's talk about using healthy ego to improve your performance. Here's a quote from T. Harry Ecker. He is an author and a motivational speaker. Quote, most people are so stuck in their egos that everything evolves around me, and more me. But if you want to be rich in the truest sense of the word, it can't only be about you. It has to include adding value to other people's lives. End quote. So what this is saying is, when the tide rises, all the boats float, right? Making everyone in your training environment or business environment better actually makes everyone better and improves you. So I think a really good way to boost your ego is to try to appreciate and try and hope for the success of everyone around you, even your competitors. You have no ego? Do you want your competitors to win? Do you get happy when people that are your quote rivals experience success? That is truly where you don't have ego. And I know people who don't like to see people that they rival with be successful. I can honestly say that I love seeing people be successful. I don't care if it's someone that I lost to in a grappling match or whatever. I like to see other people be successful. And I think that that's really important. If you can buy into that and be happy for people when they're successful, incredibly valuable and a good display of positive ego. Here's a mindset I would recommend to boost performance with healthy ego. Think about there's always more to learn. There's always someone better than you. There's always something that you can learn from anyone. And also helping people around me helps me improve. When the room improves, everyone is forced to get better. You should never go into jiu-jitsu and just think, I want to be the only one to improve. I want to beat my teammates. Why? Because your ego is forcing you to measure yourself against your teammates. If you make your teammates better, you will have to get better. Everyone gets better. The whole team gets better. The environment gets better. It's just such a better, more healthy ecosystem. Like I said earlier, I think all competitors need some degree of ego to motivate them and to make them believe that they can achieve something great. Anyone who's ever accomplished anything great has had an ego. Generals in the military, competitors, combat athletes, businessmen, women, whatever. Ego isn't good or bad. It just is. It is. It's a part of our psychology. It's part of human nature. We all have an ego. Encourage people around you to acknowledge their own ego. Okay? Maybe someone doesn't realize that their actions and their opinions are getting motivated by ego. Say, hey, have you ever thought about like how your ego could be affecting your opinion? And when you get into an argument, you don't want to lose the argument, and so your ego is taking over, and it's never a productive argument. This is super valuable. Help other people improve their performance. This pushes you to be better, creates a positive environment. It improves other people's opinions of you because they see, oh, Coach Matt doesn't care about his own development as much as he cares about everyone else's development. So I am going to now adopt that mindset. I want everyone else in the room to get better. As a gym owner, this is the type of environment you want. I don't think it's healthy to have an environment where literally every man is for themselves. Everyone's trying to outdo the other person. Everyone's constantly trying to win. Could that environment yield fantastic competitors? Yes. Will that environment be healthy in the long run, and do people enjoy an environment like that? Not really. It's also not the safest environment. Try to understand other people's opinions, especially people you disagree with, right? Don't shut away people's arguments because you disagree with them. Understand their arguments. Really try to empathize with their opinions and steel man someone's opposing view in the argument. We already talked about what a steel man is. I think this is really, really important so that you're not just going into arguments thinking, hey, my way is right, and I'm here to explain to you and get you to change your mind. Instead of that, say, hey, let's share ideas. I want to hear your ideas. Maybe I'm wrong. Can you please prove me wrong? I think this is a much healthier mindset to go into an argument with. Allow yourself to fail to grow. So when you're in jiu-jitsu, trial and error is an important part of the learning process. Failing is actually an important part of the learning process because you learn what didn't work. Don't always measure yourself by your performance in the practice room. Don't measure your worth by, did I roll well today? Did my training go well today? It's all part of the process. The good, the bad, winning and losing is all part of the learning process. Some days you're on fire and you can't make a mistake. Other days you get crushed by everyone. That's okay. It's your measure of worth as a martial artist does not revolve around performance in the training environment or even in competition. Even if you lose competitions, maybe you're the guy at the gym that stays behind and helps everyone when they have questions. Your worth is not measured by can you win or lose in competition. Okay, or in the training room. Often there's a lot of people that look up to you and they don't even care if you win or lose in the training room or competition, right? Maybe they look up to you because you do have success, but maybe they remember the time when you stayed after class for an hour and helped them work on their mechanics, right? To them, they put you on a pedestal because you gave your time to them, you gave your knowledge to them and really wanted to make them better, right? And, just like we talked about practice performance, it's not the same as competition performance. Sometimes in practice, we're always, I wouldn't say sometimes, most of the time in practice, we're looking to learn and build skill development rather than winning. And that harkens back to the putting yourself in late stage defenses, letting someone pin you chest to chest and put a hard crossface on. Now you got to work your way out. Letting someone have a fully locked armbar and try and work your way out. This is like true examples of putting your ego aside. And if you get tapped out, who fucking cares? Who cares, guys? It's not a big deal. Like I said, your worth as a martial artist has nothing to do with, am I getting tapped out in training and in competition? That being said, is it important to not get tapped out in training and competition? Yes. Okay. We don't want to get tapped out, but sometimes we're not training to win. We're training to learn skills. And that involves going late into late stage defenses. Speaking of late, I'm late now. The show is over and I hope you appreciated and enjoyed that show. I hope it was helpful. Every day in life, on the mats, in the household, in business, at work, whatever, always ask yourself, am I being controlled by my ego? What can I do to sort of have a healthy ego, have some self-esteem and humility, and work against that ego so it does not control you? Guys, I'm all done for the day. If you want to support the show or contact me, I'll leave the links at the bottom. Please, if you want to support me, check out my online academy. It's fucking awesome. $10 a month and you get access to all of my content, my seminars that I do, my competition footage, every day my lesson analysis, referee section, kids section, written lectures. It is a lot of value. And if you do like the show and you want to support it, please check out the link in the bottom. Other than that, I'm going to see you guys next week. Thanks for sticking around and listening this far. Wow. Remember, the Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. Guys, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.